Everyone has a bright light inside of them that deserves to be seen by the world. That's why it's time to shine the light on the extraordinary, who are accomplishing phenomenal things. This is the Shine Out Loud Show with Lillian Abogo and Tay Kofi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Shine Out Loud Show with me, Lillian Abogo, and unfortunately, for the very last time, my incredible co-host, Tay Kofi.
So, it's me. I'm here. So we have another hour together.
Yes, we do.
It'll be fine.
It will be fine. Now, yes, we will talk about that, but before we get into all of that, we have a woman who is as diverse as her subject matter. We have the CEO, founder, creator, self-taught, international makeup artist, Denise Rabor.
Hi.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. I'm so delighted to have you here. I mean, you're a makeup artist. You are also a CEO, a businesswoman. You're a creator and founder. You're also part of the creators of Leadership 360.
Yes.
Where'd you find the time?
That's a good question. I think it's about multitasking. It's about swapping hats at different times of the day and different times of the week. It's about having a support network, and it's a little bit about being a slight lunatic, trying to be that person.
Oh, I like that. Being a slight lunatic is the key. Okay. But no, seriously, you have many hats, and tonight we're going to look at some of them. But one of our key points that we're looking at is about the conversation you keep having, which is a common thread between your businesses, is diversity.
Yes.
And inclusivity is the way forward, and
Yes.
it's actually the arena for us to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this. Let's start with the makeup world.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be this whole push right now into all shades and every shades. But for you as a makeup artist, for you as a woman who knows the industry, are we at that diverse level yet, or do we still have a long way to go?
I think that what we've seen over the past couple of years has been a very positive change in the way that things are done in the fashion industry and in the beauty industry. I remember when I first started out, it was very rare that I got to do anyone other than a Caucasian model for shoots. And once in a while, I'd get to do somebody like Naomi or Alec Weck.
How long would that have been ago? For time perspective, 15 years.
Yeah, just years? Over 15 years.
Over 15 years, coming. Yeah. Sure.
And we were talking sort of the early 2000s. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
We have to appreciate how far we've come.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start thinking of brands in terms of the major brands are now saying we're missing a trick, because there seem to be a lot of independent brand owners who are coming up and saying, if you won't make for us, I will.
Yes.
So I think for me, we have to give a great shout out to all those new makeup artists, new people who are creating these brands that are catering for the diverse community.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I ask you something? So, as a non-fashion insider, who decides what is beautiful?
That's a good question. Who decides what's beautiful?
Yeah.
Editors decide what's beautiful.
Editors of publications, magazines.
The public decides what's beautiful.
Okay.
If a magazine put somebody on a cover who ends up being unpopular, they don't sell enough copies of that magazine,
that's it.
Then they're going to say, oh, that was a mistake. We're not going to do that again.
Mm.
Magazines have to have the courage to sort of push past that and to lead by example.
Right.
And it's something that Edward Enninful, who you'll talk about more later, he did that all-black edition of Italia Vogue.
Yes.
And they had to reprint 40,000 copies.
Yeah. I mean, that
So
was an
he must have pushed the boundaries.
amazing issue. It was beautiful. It was
Okay.
stunning. It's one of those collector's items now.
Yeah. I mean, another thing that comes to mind, again, speaking as a guy, is that I always wonder who is determining the standards of beauty. Is it men or is it women? And the reason I ask that question is that the whole business of body shaming is it's so intense. I have a teenage daughter, and they're very conscious of their bodies. And you really have to ask yourself, is this a standard, some impossible standard that's being imposed by men, or is this a standard that women impose on themselves?
I think it's probably a mixture of the two, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think the standard appears wherever it comes from, and then everybody buys into it. It's an unfortunate standard, but the only way that you're going to sort of break past something like that is for everybody to keep pushing back against it. And that's why I think social media has been such a powerful tool. You know, there are things about social media that can be a little bit negative,
Of course.
but on the positive side, it gives people a voice.
It does. And I think if we are moving into that whole conversation about body types and body shaming, there have been a lot of the body positive movement that has started with so many incredible young people and so many incredible people saying, you know what, this is my body. If you don't like it,
Your problem.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the more we celebrate that, the better. And even going into celebration, and you were talking about the Vogue edition, that all black Vogue edition, now you see major publications are featuring more diverse models.
Yes, which is a great thing. I mean, I think when it first started, I think a lot of us took a breath and thought, oh, no, not one of those fad moments where, flavor of
It's a
the
blip.
month.
Yes.
Flavor of the month, then it'll go away.
But it seems to have lasted longer. It seems to be expanding, and that's a good thing. I mean, some might say it's not happening fast enough, but at the end of the day, it's happening.
Exactly.
And I think that's the most important thing.
Is this a good moment to hit her so loud moment?
I think
A bit later.
I think, you know what, since she has two, let's go for it, because I think having two so loud moments is so good. So we'll start with one and then we'll go into the second one a little later in the show.
It connects to this.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has to be a so loud moment for Edward Ellenford becoming the editor of English Vogue. Why? Because he's the first male editor of a female magazine.
Major female
Magazine. So that's awesome. The fact that he's a black man is also awesome. I mean, I'm always sort of saying it would be amazing when ethnicity, culture, gender is no longer a thing. When we just become black people people of color, minorities doing amazing things. This just becomes the norm. But we're not there yet. So we do end up celebrating everything that happens.
I like that point, and I think the moment we remember that we have come a long way, and I think the expectations of us where that's not our expectations, and I think also that expectations culturally, we don't do those things and it's for other people, it's actually breaking down and people are going, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm creating. This is who I'm being. This is how I'm showing up. And I think the more, like you say, we celebrate how far we've come along, the better for us. And so one of the things that I wanted us to also look at is when we're talking about makeup, when we're talking about, beauty, the standard of beauty, and you brought it up, the standard of beauty is so ridiculous because you have young men, especially young men right now, dying because they want to look a certain way. You have young women dying to look like the Kim Kardashians of the world. And as a makeup artist, as someone who is in that industry, what do you say to the 15-year-old girl? What do you say to the 12-year-old girl? What do you say to the 25-year-old woman who, I want to look like Kim Kardashian. I want to look like Tyra Banks. I want to look like Nicki Minaj. What do you say to them?
And how can you influence them?
Yeah,
Part 1 and 2.
That's a tricky. Thanks for that, guys.
We try.
Don't ask too much.
That's a tricky one because, parents and families are the biggest influences for a while, but then society takes over. I think it's very difficult to fight against society's influence.
And peers.
and peers. You know, you can keep telling a young person, you're beautiful as you are, you're amazing. But if the messages that they're getting are negative, or you should be more like this, or you should be more like that, I think it's really incredibly difficult to break that particular cycle, which is why I think it's so important for the magazines and for the brands to actually start celebrating diversity, showing girls who might not be a stick insect, showing girls that have curves, showing girls that are the darkest of the dark and the lightest of the light. You know, I think that's really important. Otherwise, the messages are not there. If you're not seeing it, then you can't.
You can't embody it.
Embody it, yeah.
And see, I'm really curious because as a specialist, as a technician, as a person with so much influence, how do you think it's possible for you to pitch ideas, styling ideas, makeup ideas, which can get people thinking in other ways? Is this something that's ever occurred to you?
No, I think what I do with Wild Beauty is to sort of show positive images of different types of women, whether they're women in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or whether they're traditionally beautiful in what society considers to be traditionally beautiful. You know, because I always say beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And there's often people that I think, oh wow, that person is just beautiful, and other people go like, oh really? You think so? And yes, I do, and I'll celebrate that. And I think it's about constantly
on Wow Beauty. On your,
when we do photo shoots, for sure, because I always use real people where possible and celebrate their beauty. So I think ultimately it's about continue being one of those people that pushes out positive messages, positive images. That's the only way to me that you can affect any kind of change.
So the last one on this kind of segment here is how important are films, fashion, and other media in deciding what is beauty and which way fashions are going to go, and the part people of colour have to play in all of that?
Well, we do play a part in all that. I mean, some of the most famous models in the world have been women of colour for many years. In terms of fashion, there are many amazing fashion designers who are people of colour. There are many fashion designers that use diverse models. Fortunately, now that's increasing, and that's a good thing.
Exactly.
That's a good thing. I mean, the issue of size hasn't really been addressed fully yet. You know, they're still gravitating more towards the traditional model type. But even with that, you know, the boundaries have to be pushed. People have to keep raising their hands and saying, no, this is what we want to see.
Lupita Nyong'o spoke really powerfully after 12 Years a Slave. Who was she? Is that Longcom? Is she Longcom?
She's Longcom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Longcom. A fantastic advocacy about standards of beauty, how she was growing up. A person like her couldn't be considered beautiful, and look where she is now. So I think perhaps there's more of this sort of stuff needs to be done and owned by the people who are kind of in the lead, right?
Most definitely. And I think, you know, almost every week we keep seeing new campaigns coming out where a woman of colour, somebody who's non-white, is being put at the forefront, and that's a good thing. I think the main thing with that is that it needs to be consistent.
Yes.
We need the consistency so that it starts to become the norm. You know, the pushback is always going to be there when people, the wider society, there's always going to be people in society that don't like diversity.
Yeah.
And they'll always push back. You have to just do the same thing.
Exactly. Now, we've actually talked around your business, but we haven't actually referenced it enough, because let's talk about, you have two businesses, like I said at the very beginning. You have Leadership 360 and you have Wild Beauty. Now, what inspired Wild Beauty?
Wild Beauty was inspired, I think, by my parallel career in makeup. It felt like the right thing to do. It sort of tied in really well with my passion for diversity and inclusion. I felt that it was important for there to be that I wanted to create a website where women of any ethnicity, any age could feel comfortable to visit. And, you know, one of the rules I have at Wild Beauty for me is if I can't use the product, whether if it's a makeup product, then I'm not going to feature it.
Right.
If it's not inclusive, then it doesn't belong on Wild Beauty.
Right.
Because I think it's important to lead by example.
Exactly. And I think I've been on Wild Beauty. I love your site, and I love what you're doing with the work around it is really about saying everyone is welcome.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this whole question around the standard of beauty. Is it changing? It seems to be this. We keep going around in circles of what is beauty, defining, especially when we want to define our standards of beauty. And I think that the more we get people like you saying, well, there isn't one standard of beauty, the better it is for us all. Now, when you look at products, what would growing up, there was an idea that you have people who can't see her tonight, you have the most incredible blue eyeliner. But growing up, we were told that's not for us. We're not supposed to use these colors or that colors. But what do you think now in the standards of the rules should be there is no rule and it should apply?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there are no rules in beauty.
Wow,
that's always been my
great.
goal.
There are no rules in beauty. You've got to tweet that.
I think it's important to own your beauty. And if you do that, then you can just be you. And I think that's important, just do you and be you. Keep it real, be authentic. I know that can be sometimes difficult for those like the younger generation who are feeling the pressure of social media and wanting to look like this person and that person. Why would you want to look like anybody else anyway?
That's a good question. But there is this whole almost a standardized type of beauty now, regardless of what race you're from. It's the high eyebrows, the long hair, the very tiny, tiny waist with all the paper, the different challenges to make your waist the size of Barbie. We are in a constant barrage of things. And then you have people like, what's her name now? Her name has just escaped me. She's gone natural. She's gone no makeup. Her no makeup campaign. Alicia Keys.
Mm-hmm.
Alicia Keys turned up at an award ceremony. God forbid, sans any makeup, and there was nothing but talk about it. Some people were positive. Some people took her to task. And as a makeup artist, where do you stand in this?
Makeup is an adornment. Makeup should make you feel good. If you want to wear makeup, you wear makeup. If you don't want to wear makeup, you don't wear makeup. I mean, I thought that her no makeup campaign was great simply because it gave a lot of women the freedom to say, actually, I don't have to wear a full face of makeup if I don't want to. On the other side of things, I thought, well, because it kind of went a little bit extreme for a while with everybody sort of saying, okay, no makeup, no makeup. Some people look great with a little bit of mascara and,
You see, I grew up with the notion that your makeup is there to enhance you.
Yeah.
And, to enhance the features you have. Sometimes I see the full face and I'm like, I actually want to recognize myself personally in the mirror. And, when I have my makeup on and when I, like, wait, who's that? Oh, yeah, that's me. And, when you take that whole makeup off. And I think, we can jest about it, but I feel for the younger generation. I feel for the younger women who there is this notion that they have to be on 24/7. They have to have the full makeup because there's that pressure. And you started, Tete, with the conversation about your daughter feeling the pressure, feeling like she cannot show up. That you have to be consistently. If you have no makeup on at any point, somehow the world will end.
I don't know. I disagree slightly on that one simply because I've met lots of young women and women in general who, some people are really into their makeup and they will not leave the house without it. But then there's a lot of people that are quite happy to go without makeup and they just use lipstick and mascara.
Very subtly as well.
Yeah.
In fact, you have to look and see that they got the makeup on, and which is how that kid actually views it. But I was going to say that there was something else I noticed on your website which kind of took me back and was kind of counterintuitive. Because when I looked on Wild Beauty, I saw this amazing article about sleep.
Okay.
And it made me think that, here's a makeup artist dealing with adornment, as you called it. But that made me start to think that beauty comes from inside as well, because
Yeah.
sleep isn't something you can buy in a bottle and slap on your face.
No. Sleep, while beauty is about inner beauty and outer beauty
Wellness.
and wellness. So my idea is that you can't be your best self in any sphere of life if you're not starting from the inside, if you're not well. And sleep is one of the critical areas.
Exactly. You can't function without sleep. So we're going to segue because we're going to move into your other hat, which is your professional area, which is your leadership. And people go, well, but how can we be doing leadership and makeup and, how can you do both? But I think that you are very much in the position to discuss both because you're discussing diversity. So if you're discussing diversity in how we show up in our day to day, then discussing it in leadership aspects, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because we actually need to get into that conversation as well.
Yes.
So tell me, how did you get to Leadership 360?
I got to Leadership 360. I've always had a passion for business and leadership. As a kid, I would read fashion magazines, and on the other side, I'd be reading business magazines and biographies of great leaders. I really love that kind of stuff.
Right.
After I did my master's in human resource development, I kind of had the need to do something, to launch something. And so I launched Leadership 360 because it sort of gave me a chance to celebrate diverse leaders and business people. That was the idea behind it. I needed to just get that out. It wasn't actually set up as a business per se. It was just a website where I got to interview leaders and share their stories as a way of inspiring. Because there's so many people that want to start businesses, so many people that want to step up their management skills. So I kind of thought it was important to start a website that could do that. And that's what it's about.
Okay. So now let's look at it. We are still in a position where we're still talking about we need more female leaders. We need more women in boardrooms. We need more women leading Fortune 500 companies. Now, what would you say is the one thing that is actually keeping women out of these rooms?
If you look at any of the statistics, any of the reports that are written about gender balance and leadership, it's always the fact that traditionally women are not seen in that kind of role. Women get to certain levels of management, and then, if you believe in the glass ceiling, then the glass ceiling appears, and that stops them from moving forward. The Lord Davies did a lot with his quotas and getting the idea of getting women onto boards, that 25% thing.
Yeah.
And that's really done some amazing work. The naysayers will say, well, of course, but then don't forget, a lot of those roles have been non-exec roles. But at least something has happened.
Right.
And that's positive.
To move in the right direction.
To move in the right direction, indeed. Yeah. When it comes to members of the BAME communities, the statistics are quite dire. Only 1 in 16 FTSE 100 board members are from the BAME
communities.
Yeah.
That's shocking, yeah.
That's disgusting. You use shocking, and that's just disgusting.
It's really, really, really quite, yeah. It's not very, very...
It's not inspiring, is it?
No, it's not. It's not inspiring. And actually, it's actually quite frightening because if we still in 2017 are having these statistics, what are we doing wrong?
That's a really good question. What are we doing wrong? I think it's one of those weird situations where I think the fact that currently there's been a big push in society, within organizations for better diversity and inclusion, it's kind of been the buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as that pressure continues, and big organizations and corporations start to
pick it out,
understand that it affects their bottom line, that their profits ultimately will be affected by their lack of diversity because, globalization is increasing. People have money to spend, and people will start voting with their bucks. You know, if they're not
Exactly.
seeing, if they can't see a manager with an organization who looks something like them, then people will stop supporting those companies.
Well, I think the best example of that was if you piss off a community that has money, they will make you pay. I mean, look at what happened to United Airlines. They lost how much? Tay, over how much?
Oh, it was almost a billion. They lost 900
100
million
million in
off their share price
in 24 hours.
24 to 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
That's significant.
That's basically the Chinese made their displeasure felt. This is not how you treat someone of our community.
Yeah. I mean, that was a shocking display. Anyway.
That was disgusting. You know, regardless of what community you're from, that was disgusting.
Yeah.
But the community said, "No, we're not impressed with this."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the other thing when it comes to diversity in network in leadership is the networks, because people don't become leaders by accident.
No.
They join networks, they're coached, they're mentored.
Yes.
They're on the inside track. They get to hear about the opportunities that are going before anybody else. And lo and behold, they wind up in those opportunities. And lo and behold, they're all kind of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant types, which are going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the state of networking for, say, people of colour to push them, propel them forwards into these roles?
I think the networks have increased. There are more networks being provided now. More, you know, people are stepping up and saying, actually, we need to create our own networks. We need to coach. We need to get people to understand that coaching and mentoring is a thing that everybody needs to do and everybody can benefit from.
Right.
And I think that's sort of given some strength to what is a dire situation. I think that it's interesting because within organizations, another statistic is, you know, only 1 in 15 managers within organizations, again, are from the BAME communities.
Yeah.
So it's also looking at the organizations themselves and sort of challenging their unconscious bias and sometimes conscious bias, where they sort of say, okay, no, this person is not really managing the material.
Yes.
How will the staff relate to this person? Do they, you know, do they have the same way of being? Do they fit the organizational culture?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, of course, they do if you actually give them the chance to.
I'll tell you a hilarious story. It wasn't that long ago. This would have been in the 90s, where I was actually selling advertising to a very well-known advertising agency. I won't mention their name. And the client was a high street electronics retailer. I won't mention their name. And I pitched in a black title that I was working for at the time. And the account planner, who had an excellent relationship with me, excellent in the sense that he could tell me what he thought. And he reported back and said, you know, if I pitch this to my client, they'll say we want shoppers, not looters.
Oh,
Goodness.
Okay. That went down, that story became apocryphal in advertising, but it comes back down to stereotypes. So my question to you now is, you can push all you like, but how do these stereotypes also affect the aspiration of BAME people going forward into these roles? Because if people tell you often enough, this is not for you, some people may internalize that message. Now, that didn't happen to you. Why?
My parents were both they were both business people. You know, when they came to this country, they were both focused on business and moving forward, and they sort of instilled in us, you know, whatever you want to do, you can do this. You can do whatever you want to do. So growing up, you know, if there was never a question of I can't do something. It was just like, okay,
Nothing was off the cards. Nothing was off the table.
So, you know, if there was ever a blockage, I just didn't see it. You know, you just follow your path. You know, it comes from having your self-esteem
intact.
It comes from having your values and knowing who you are. And I think that's regardless of any ethnicity, whoever you are as a person. I think if you have your
Fundamental life
values
hack.
Yeah.
Yes.
and you know who you are, then you just sort of say, anyone who doesn't like it, too bad.
Exactly. And keeping that theme, there's something that you were talking about, saying the networks that we need to start building and more are being put in place.
Mhm.
Do you also think when we think of our businesses, because a lot of us are now dual career, we have our day job, we have businesses, but do you think, especially in the BME community, and actually let me be very specific here, in the Black community, that we tend to think small when it comes to our businesses? Instead of thinking of businesses as a growing feature, we think, oh, it's a side hustle, it's a this, it's a that, instead of it looking at it's a full-fledged business for us to grow and build our Fortune 500, our next major corporation.
Um, I straight answer, I don't know. I mean, I've met lots of people who
Different
started
types of people.
businesses who they're aiming for the big
The sky.
for the big time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think especially with the sort of millennial generation, they are sort of
Blinkers are off.
they're saying I'm going for this, and I
Yeah.
think that's amazing.
And I do, right now, if you look through social media, you will see that there is a distinct change. There is a distinct change, not just on this side of the Atlantic, all different parts. And there's more call for building the Black pound, the Black dollar, the Black yen. There's more for this idea that we need to reinvest our money within our communities.
Mhm.
And there was something I read where somebody was saying, well, there's, somebody had come on their website who was non person of color and asked, oh, does it mean that the buy Black, does it mean that I, as a non-Black person, cannot buy from you? The person's response was, well, it's the same way that we, as people of color, buy from other corporations. So do you think that the push for more businesses of colors to reinvest within our own community, does that actually alienate other people from investing with us?
That's another good question. Goodness me, I think I'm going to sip of water.
We'll give you the easy ones. We're just warming up.
I think that it's reinvesting in our own communities is amazing and has to be done because it builds. It helps to build brands. It helps to build companies. So I think that's really important. I think at the end of the day, business is business, and I think that you have to be smart about it. I don't think that alienating other communities is necessarily the way to go. I think you need to make it clear that yes, it's a Black business, and that's not an issue, and you can shop here if you want to. I think people need to feel, because otherwise we're not leading by example.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of need to sort of make it clear in your marketing that you are, if you want to make it clear that you're inclusive, and that means that anybody can buy your products.
And I think
Because that way you're bound to make more money.
Exactly. And it's actually, like you said, we're leading by example because we cannot spout that we want inclusiveness and we want diversity. And then in the reverse, are doing the same thing that we're accusing others of doing.
Mm.
So I think that's actually a very good point. And again, I'm going to weave that thread between the beauty and leadership. When you look at it from both sides of the both sides of your businesses, what is the one thing that we have to do on a day-to-day to ensure that we get the kind of inclusiveness that we want to see?
I think there's lots of different things, I guess, that sort of fit into that make that sort of pie whole. I think first of all we have to own our power. I think it's important to sort of accept, to acknowledge, and to celebrate, and to say we have power. I have power. Every single individual on this planet has power, and I think it's about owning that and not allowing yourself to be pushed back or put into boxes. I think society is guilty of putting people into boxes, nice, neat compartments, and there's a box and that's the Black people box.
Yes.
But everybody's an individual, and within us as people of color, none of us are the same. We don't all have the same story. We don't all have the same backgrounds. We're not all from the same class. We're not all from the same country.
Exactly.
We're all individuals. So step out of the box and sort of own your power. I think that's really important.
I mean, one of the things I've always discovered is that for a lot of businesses, they need to define themselves rather than to let somebody else define them. And in terms of this is surely one of the greatest hacks of leadership. What can you say about people defining themselves instead of succumbing to this thing of somebody putting you in and the box they'll put you in could be a 1 litre box, okay, but you're a 50-litre person. If you try and cram it in, you waste a lot, make a mess.
Ultimately, each and every one of us is responsible for defining ourselves. If you don't define yourself, somebody will do it for you.
Precisely.
I define myself, you define yourselves. I know it can be difficult to stand up and say, no, this is me.
Yeah.
That model that you have of me, that stereotype that you're sort of putting around, that's not me. That's not my story. And I think it's important to keep that at the forefront, especially if you want to start a business, especially if you want to do something different with your life. I think you have to sort of say, okay, let me define myself now. I actually have a T-shirt that says I define myself.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
that's quite important. And again, I mean, further in this thing, a lot of people are afraid that if they define themselves, they'll be rejected or cast out. It's one of the classical ways of keeping people connected in a negative way.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you have to say about the fact that you may get pushback if you start to define yourself, because you've got experience of actually doing this? What have you learned from this?
I've met people who've said that by trying to define themselves in what and however they want to be defined, that they've had pushback from society, from their friends, from their families, and I guess that must be really quite difficult to manage. I mean, if your family sort of try to say to you, no, you should be staying within these boundaries, within these parameters. This is how we are. That must be quite difficult, and I don't really have an answer as to how you would get past that, because it takes a lot of self-determination and courage to be able to step away.
But the thing is, it's in one of Maya Angelou's quotes, is that courage is the most difficult and important virtue, because all the other virtues spring from courage. Without courage, nothing is going to happen. And actually, my experience of that has always been, when you define yourself, it doesn't matter how people react at first. They have no choice but to deal with what's presented.
Yeah.
And this is, perhaps for entrepreneurs and so on, this is the most important lesson they're going to have to learn, so that they can scale up their ideas.
Yes.
Otherwise, somebody else is always defining who you are, how you should be, how big you should grow, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, telling you what's right for you.
Yeah.
And when we think about that, for me, I'm going to put this out there. There seems to be this whole idea that when we define ourselves, we are putting ourselves on the line. And sometimes we get burnt, and so we run back from the fire and go, well, this wasn't really worth it because I got burnt. You, as an individual with both hats and both sides of your businesses, how do you deal with being burnt? How do you deal with experiences of failure?
I think I don't see anything as a failure. I think I recently put something on Instagram that said something about, I live, I learn, I grow. And I think accepting that not everything is going to go 100% the way you want it to. Some things won't work out at all, but usually that's a good thing.
Right.
Because usually there's something better around the corner. You've learned something from it.
Sure.
Take the learning, figure it out, put it on paper.
Get better.
Have a cry, have your moment, stay in bed for 2 days, and then just get up and say, okay, I learned this, and now when I do this again, it's going to be better.
It'd be interesting for people who are listening to tweet in any questions or observations they have about defining yourself. You can put it to us, #defining yourself, or defining yourself, #define yourself. But if you have any questions for Denise, pop them in and or for Lillian or for myself about this matter, please tweet them to us.
Yeah, tweet them to us at Shine Out Loud, hashtag Shine Out Loud, and Out Loud Denise Rabor will pick them up on the hashtags, and let's find out what you think. Let's find out what you think, because we still have Denise here for another 20 minutes, and there's some more things I want to find out from this woman, because this is a woman who has, like she's displayed, a very diverse business interest in beauty and fashion, but what ties them both is the need for inclusiveness and diversity in both sides of her business. So I am actually really enjoying this conversation. So I think one other question for you is, what drives you? What drives you to get up in the morning and do what you do?
I think I just enjoy what I do.
You drive yourself.
Yeah. I guess. Never thought about that one before.
Well, no, you see, your answer is very interesting because it seems almost like a weird question to you, but it's only because your definition of yourself is so strong. What you want to do is so self-evident to you that that's what gets you out of bed. And you probably, the way you spoke, you just, it almost sounds to me like, isn't that the same for everybody? Of course it's not.
No, I know it's not. I mean,
and you're very, very, very fortunate in that, because there are things which you know through coaching, mentoring. Nobody's, your mum and dad didn't sit you down and say, well, you must do that. You picked up these things growing up, but not everybody has that good fortune to be raised like that. And so that's why it's important to, it's really helpful to share with people what drives, what gets you up.
I think a lot of the drive probably has come from, my parents. My parents, they, when I was little, they sort of picked us up and said, right, my mom said, we're going to New York. And Dad was like, okay. And off she went, and then we went along. And so, we had our formative years growing up in New York. And you sort of got that whole, you can be anything you want to be, you can do anything you want to do from there.
I don't think you can state that strongly enough, because if a person doesn't have that, it's one of the greatest conundrums that they're going to face, because society is telling them you can't do this, and they're wondering, but I want to do that, and what's wrong with that? But society's saying you can't do that. So it's so useful to have somebody to tell the person that you can do what you like. And all of that pushback is just a huge diversion.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep it real and to sort of remember that, of course, it's easy to say that from a fairly privileged position of sort of having had all that stuff.
Absolutely.
But for somebody who's hasn't got those opportunities, I think it must be quite difficult to sort of listen to it and say, okay, well, how do I do that?
Yeah.
I can't get a job. I've got all these different issues, all these disadvantages, and the pushback from society on people is so intense sometimes that they just can't even begin to figure out how to make that change. How to do that.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why I think it's really important to have somebody, and that's what a mentor is, because it's what they know that you don't know.
Yeah.
And they've internalized the message and they're living it. So that's why I always like to share with my friends that actually it's the whole thing is just a huge red herring, that of course you will have pushback. If you're doing something positive, you're bound to have pushback. You only get no pushback if you're doing nothing.
Yeah.
Then this is true. If you have no enemies, it means that
you're not doing anything.
You're not doing anything.
You don't exist. You're a ghost.
If no one is talking about you, and that's the thing. The fact of the matter is, there's this idea that if it goes wrong, there's a problem. And I have to remember, my favorite quote is actually by Thomas Edison, who without him will be sitting in the dark, literally. So, and the man failed not once, not twice. He failed 999 times. And he goes, I didn't fail, but I found 999 times how not to do it.
Yes.
And how many of us will have persevered after 10, after 15, after 20? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I would have kept going after 100 times. But but 999 times, that is when you have to say to yourself, I'm in this game. I'm in this for the long haul.
It reminds me of that Chumbawamba song that was a huge hit. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Ain't no one gonna put me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. I won't try and sing it. I'd clear our audience in seconds flat. But you know the one.
I do know the one. So
can we?
I just want to wrap this very quickly. In that point around, what drives you, what makes you say, despite what may come, I'm standing and I'm staying. What is the one thing that you will make you continue?
My vision. I can see it. I can see the end result, and I don't necessarily do things the traditional way. I do them my way. So if you were looking at it in a traditional business model, the business plan, the financial plan, and all that stuff, sometimes you have to work from instinct. And that's how I've done my businesses, because I'm able to do it that way. It's not for everyone, but it works for me because it allows me to visualize and to see the business, and I can see the end result, and I know that I'm going to get there, and I can take the time to get there, because you can't rush.
Yeah.
You can't rush.
It's this thing. I mean, people talk a lot about authenticity and so on and so forth. But again, it comes back for me to define either you defining yourself and listening to your inner voice, or listening to what everybody else is outside of you is telling you you should go. But one thing is for certain is that if you're on the right track, everything that you do is meaningful. If you're not on the right track, everything you do is just painful. So Edison must have been on the right. He was listening to that voice inside. So he knew he could persevere. Now, of course, if you don't have that self-belief and self-knowledge, you'll never hear that inner voice. And I think it's one of the greatest secrets of success in any enterprise is that it's got to be connected to your vision, your mission, your purpose, rather than somebody saying, hey, everybody's doing this, so let me have a go as well.
Yeah.
Would you?
No, I agree, definitely. Yeah. Most definitely.
And then on that note, I would like to know, what is your vision? What is your driving, overarching vision?
I want both of my businesses to be change makers. I want to be able to have some kind of influence ultimately on leadership, diverse leadership, business, getting those voices heard, and with the beauty website, to have a successful website that women of all ethnicities, of all ages can feel comfortable visiting. That's basically the vision for those two things.
So I've got to ask, in connection with this vision going forward, I'm always interested in media. You do a fair bit of. Do you do quite a lot of social media?
Yeah, probably not as much as I should, but yeah, I do. It's very important that the message that I'm getting out there is authentic.
What's your Instagram, by the way? What's your Instagram address?
It's at Wow Beauty.
At Wow Beauty.
Yeah. Well, at Wow Beaut, actually, because the beauty was gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Wow Beauté, I suppose.
Yeah. That's great. So what kind of messages do you put out on the Instagram?
Basically, there's empowerment. There's every day starts with there's always a quote, because I love a quote. I think I'm a walking quote, a walking aphorism.
Yeah.
So I do like to have a quote. So today it was take the next step. Yesterday it was just begin. The day before, I listen, I learn, I grow.
I like that.
And those quotes seem to really resonate with people. And then there's always a sort of product listing. because we beauty website.
Absolutely.
We have to feature them.
And
Absolutely.
then there's always a sort of a face or an image that I really love. So yesterday it was this fabulous earring shot.
Yes, absolutely gorgeous.
And I just love her neck and her cheekbones and everything was just
Great use of colour as well for the contrast.
Yeah.
It shows out the ear.
And that was a Harvey Nichols jewelry advert.
Okay.
Right.
So I sort of borrowed it from the website.
Nice.
Right. Have you got any tips and tricks on making very visual social media items meaningful? Because I'll be frank with you, sometimes when I go on Instagram, some of the stuff on there is so shallow, it's not true.
Yeah, well, you know what? Instagram is an equal opportunities portal, isn't it?
Sure.
It's for everybody.
Sure.
And the lovely thing about it is it's democratic.
Yeah.
If people just want to post selfies of themselves, hey, go do that. It's fantastic. If you want to I've seen Instagram pages that are just quotes. Great.
Exactly.
It's whatever you want it to be.
Sure.
And I think that's really good.
And I think, sometimes when we are looking at something that might be, in our eyes, just a bit superficial, but that story, that particular image is reaching the person it needs to reach. In a way, it could be something that looks totally shallow, but it's actually something that would stop somebody from feeling really bad about themselves. I've seen some real interesting stories, and that particular story has helped somebody with eating disorders, have helped a woman who feels like she's no longer beautiful, feel like she's vibrant, there's still more to her. And I think it's, like you said, it's an equal opportunity space. It's where people go and can express all breadths.
So this isn't an attack on Instagram. It's about getting people to ace their own Instagram. But what you're talking about then is just express your feeling, express what you want to express.
Well, I mean, I use it purely for business.
Yeah.
And I try to get my brand message out through Instagram. And I think for most businesses, that's probably the same.
Yeah.
It's about the brand message. Obviously, people have their personal Instagram, and that's a different thing altogether because they can express whatever they want to express about their daily lives on there, and I think that's great too. So I think it's just about honing your message
and tying that to your vision
and knowing what your message is, and then staying true to it.
Okay. And as far as messages go, we have one more so loud moment from you.
The other so loud moment was just last week when somebody wrote in to me at the website, and basically she was just saying that she's been following the website for a few months and that she just really feels she loves the mix of empowerment and beauty and wellness, and it's made a difference to her life, and it's enabled her and made her feel
That's
bolder.
enormous. That's huge.
And that was like, I was like,
Very satisfying.
Yeah.
That's worth getting out of bed for in the morning, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I don't believe that is actually 8:54. I know.
wow.
How time flies when you're having fun. Denise, we could talk for hours and hours, and there's so much more to go into about you and your work. So how can people find out more about you? Where can they find more about you?
There's a little bit of a biog on the website, wowbeauty.co. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm not a very good LinkedIn person, but I'm
You're on there.
I'm there. And
would that be under your name or under Leadership 360?
It's under my name, Denise.
Okay.
Initial O and then Rabor.
Okay. What about Twitter? You on Twitter as well?
I'm on Twitter. Yeah, Leadership 360 is on Twitter, and Wow Beauty is on Twitter.
Okay. So,
which is your favorite platform if people want to engage with you? Which is the one that you kind of connect with the most?
They're quite different.
Yeah, they do different things.
Yeah, I mean, they're quite different. So I guess it's whatever people feel more comfortable with. I do manage my stuff myself, so I will see if people DM me or write something, I'll see it.
okay, awesome. So you can find Denise on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, on her website, wildbeauty.co for all of you who are not in the UK, and www.wildbeauty.co. You can find her on Leadership 360, and that's leadership, and that's the number 3 and the letter 60. So that's Yeah, and is that a .com or a .co?
That's a .com.
So that on .com. So, before we sign out, before we go away from this topic for this evening, what would you tell a 5-year-old girl who wants to grow up and start a business, who wants to look at cracking a business arena? What would you tell this young little girl is the first thing she needs to know?
Ooh, what would I tell a 5-year-old girl? I would tell her to be proud of who she is. I would tell her to be authentic, to be herself, to be visible. I'd tell her to be visible, and I'd tell her to not to step into any boxes. Step out of the box.
Excellent.
I think as far as parting comments for tonight, that is the parting comment.
Yeah.
Step out of the box and be seen.
Yeah.
So once again, I'm going to thank my incredible guest, Denise Rabor, for being on the show tonight.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
It's been awesome having you.
Have you enjoyed it?
I have enjoyed it, yes. You guys are great.
It's been a pleasure having you here. So that's good.
And we mentioned something in the beginning. If you were listening, and if you didn't, shame on you. Where were you? But we are losing our incredible co-host.
Yeah, it's à bientôt and à la prochaine. See you again,
Yes.
etc. Lots of things happening. The PR the PR portal is kind of moving forward leaps and bounds. So there are many other things to get in touch for me to take care of. But ever a fan of the Shine Out Loud show. I think Lillian is the most amazing host and presenter. So stay with it, and I'll be cheering from the sidelines. I'll be the main cheerleader.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's been fun creating this with you and doing the shows over the last few weeks with all our hiccups and tech gremlins. And
by the way, she's the most amazing techie. Actually ring her up if you have a problem. I'm sure she'll have something constructive to say. That's ruined your spare time. Really.
Oh, yes.
No, but she is truly amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. And so, yes, so from the bottom of my heart and the rest of the team, we want to say thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Yes, keep in touch.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep finding out what you're doing and talking about you and talking with you.
Absolutely. Hey, will you have me on as a guest?
Well, I'm sure we can figure out some dates to get you in. Nicole, what do you think? We can find some dates to get him in. We'll figure it out. So this has been the Shine Out Loud show, and for the last time, it's Lillian Ibogo and Tay Kofi.
Good night. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to the Shine Out Loud show. If you want to connect with us or let us know what you thought of today's show, be sure to follow us on Twitter @ShineOutShow.